Hello, folks. Welcome to the Case for Life program. Wow, we've got a double blessing this time around. For 2 weeks in a row, we get my colleague Megan Almon to join us, and we're going to be talking to her about something very important that applies to your kids and grandkids. If you've not joined us before on this program, I encourage you to visit our sites. We have a course there that will equip you to make your pro-life case in a week or less. We call it Pro-Life 101. Within 1 week, you can master the moral logic of the pro-life view and be able to communicate it effectively to those you work with, go to school with, or maybe just chat with on a regular basis. Well, today, we decided we wanted to bring Megan back. She's always a great guest, but I thought, you know what? There's something we didn't talk about the last time around that I want to talk about this time, and that is Summit Ministries, one of our primary sponsors of the Case for Life show. And I wanted Megan on for two reasons. Number one, she is a faculty member there. She speaks on pro-life issues like I do, and she also speaks on other topics like beauty, relationships, and marriage, and a lot of other things that are important to our students. So I wanted to bring her in to talk about Summit, but also she's an insider. For 5 years, she and her husband Tripp ran the Gap Year program at Summit Ministries. They were staffers there, so they know the program frontwards and backwards. And Megan, I thought it'd be good for our audience to get a show dedicated solely to this question. Why should my kids go to Summit? And I want to start today by asking you this. Can you think of a story or two with an encounter with a student at Summit where their being there absolutely reoriented their worldview so it now aligned with a biblical one?
Yes. Goodness, I can think of many. With just regard to the pro-life things, I can think of students' faces come to mind or stories that I hear later about those who came to Summit as young Christians or as those questioning the Christian worldview. They heard a pro-life case for the first time and completely changed their mind on the abortion issue because they came in thinking that abortion might be a good idea, especially in some of the hard cases. And they left going, not only do I disagree with what I came in thinking, but now I want to do something about it.
That is so important what you just said in an evangelistic sense, because sometimes we encounter well-meaning Christians who say, you can't change anybody's minds on abortion if you don't first convert them to Christ, which we both know from experience is false. But in reality, I've seen it work the opposite way. They become convinced of the truth of the pro-life position, and then they ask themselves this question. If the Christian worldview speaks intelligently on the issue of life, what else might it speak intelligently to? And it opens the door for us to talk about the resurrection, talk about Jesus being the only way to salvation, talking about how truth is not something subjective to us. We discovered it objectively. It just opens the door to a host of things. I'm going to share a funny story about Summit here. I think it's been now 4 or 5 years ago. I was speaking there, as I always do, on the issue of pro-life. And I gave my pro-life talk that morning, and I was walking toward the cafeteria to go have lunch with the students, and I passed a group of students sitting on the steps just a little ways away from the classroom. And you'll know what steps I'm talking about there, Megan. And as I went by, I heard this student look up at me and go, wait, stop, you have to stop. You got to talk to her. And he points at this girl with blonde hair sitting there on the steps. And he proceeds to tell me her story in front of her. She told everybody on the bus coming to Summit from Dallas, I guess it was a church in Dallas, that she liked all of the topics, but there was one topic that would not change her mind. That there was no way any speaker at Summit was going to convince her that her pro-abortion views were wrong. And she told all her friends, hey, I'm with you on all these other topics. I believe God exists. I believe in intelligent design. I believe that transgenderism is wrong. I believe that Christians should be informed, but you will never convince me that I'm wrong about a woman's so-called right to have an abortion. And that girl was sitting there in tears saying, sir, I don't know what happened, but you utterly blew my worldview apart in this session. And she thanked me for it.
Yes.
And her friends were giving her grief like, hey, you shouldn't have been bragging. I'm like, no, be glad she changed her mind. That's good enough to be joyful here.
Yeah.
But we hear these stories all the time at Summit.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about Summit that sets the stage for those type of stories?
Well, let me just piggyback on your story and describe what I think it is. I think that Summit is, in every sense of the good Christian way of talking about it, it's a magical place. I don't mean that every student who comes has life transformation, but every student who comes feels cared for and hears the truth talked about in a straightforward way. Summit is a place where you can come and you don't have the pressure of like mom and dad looking over your shoulder, though moms and dads are doing excellent work. I am a mom of teenagers, so hear me on this. We need,
Yeah.
as moms and dads, someone else who's willing to come alongside of us and
Yeah.
stand in that space for our students. And those someone else's are the faculty and the staff at Summit Ministries. The faculty are incredible in their own right. You and I, Scott, are privileged to be members of the faculty at Summit. So many other content experts in areas of theology, ethics, pastors who come, so they're practitioners of this type of thing, academics who teach in the classroom. Students get exposed to so many different thinkers, but one thing they all have in common is number one, they can relate to where our students are. Number two, they treat them as adults. They do not
Yeah.
shy away from talking about hard things. And I think that when students hear that and catch that, and I think, Scott, I can give you credit here because typically the pro-life view is on day one of the Summit Conference. So we walk right through the front door with these students and talk about the hard things. We do it in a way that is gospel-centered, that ties things back to the Christian worldview, and we even give them ways of talking to someone else about them. Thirdly,
Yeah.
not only the speakers and the staff are incredible, the staff is highly trained to facilitate conversations with those students. And those staff members, I watched them. It was actually 7 years, Scott, that we were at Summit. That's okay, but we were there a little bit longer. And I can tell you, year in and year out, session in and session out, and there are, 8 different sessions each summer, 8 different student conferences. Those staffers, the night before the conference, will go seat by seat and they pray over each individual notebook, over each individual student who's going to be sitting in that seat. They pray for their own small group that they're going to be stewarding for those 2 weeks. So they are big on relating to those students and helping them wrestle through their questions. All together, those students come and find a place where people are like-minded, are not afraid of their questions, and are happy to engage on those topics, which makes those lunchroom conversations pretty interesting.
Yeah, they are. So I'm going to toss out to you some objections a parent might think about hearing you and I talk about this. The first one would be this: well, I just don't think my student has the attention span to sit there in a classroom for hours each day listening to lectures. They're used to a lot more fun. The church youth group is fun. It's pizza. It's swallowing sardine contests. It's stuff that keeps things moving. How would you address that objection?
Well, on the front end, I would say Summit has plenty of fun involved. It's not just hours and
Yeah.
hours of classroom, though it is that. They have outside time. My favorite pastime at Summit is called speed volleyball, which is a wild volleyball experience, and you don't have to have any experience
Yep.
to play. They'll rope you right in and teach you along the way. But there are hikes, there are
Yep.
adventures, there are other components because we want students outside in God's creation, enjoying Him in the world that He made. So there's plenty of fun involved. But the
Right.
second challenge I would offer to those parents is be careful that you're not taking a view of your son or daughter that is too low. Those students
That
come
is
to
so
Summit
good.
and they can handle it. Not only can they handle it, there's peer pressure, first of all, right? Their peers are sitting right beside them.
Yeah.
And let me just add this, Scott, because you know this. Summit intentionally arranges seating so that most of the students are sitting guy, girl, guy, girl, guy, girl. There are many reasons for that, one of which is to help them just get to know people that they might not get to know otherwise. But every single one of those students is in that classroom. And I don't know of many who have not risen to the occasion when given the opportunity.
Yeah, I've seen that too. In fact, one time at one of the sessions I was at Summit, a young man said to me, I'd be okay if we canceled the recreation time and just had more speakers. Now, I
Hmm.
don't think we should cancel the recreation time, but it was interesting that he couldn't get enough of it. And I think
Yeah.
your point about selling students short is a big one. I think there's this mentality in church that we have to constantly be entertaining students, constantly be keeping the programs moving in order to keep them engaged. And we really do them a disservice when we don't believe in them enough to handle some pretty solid teaching.
Yeah.
And everywhere I go, I find the students aren't the problem. It's the gatekeepers that are the problem.
Hmm.
The people that are overseeing these students who are convinced, oh, our students can't handle that.
Oh,
That's just so frustrating to me when the gatekeepers have less faith in the students to learn than the students have faith in themselves to learn.
yeah. Well, the air that we breathe in our society is that students, teenagers, which by the way wasn't even in our vernacular until Time magazine threw it into an article in the 1940s, that
That's true. That's
teenagers are
true.
for some reason only meant to consume. Our entire society is geared to help teenagers just consume, play video games, wear this, do that, buy this product, and not be producers. And one thing they encounter at Summit is something to live a life of meaning for, which is to become the type of person who who sets the tone, who steps out in the Christian worldview and is different from the rest of the society. But that expectation, I think, culturally has lowered the view of teenagers. And what we have found, Scott, to your point, is that when you present them with it, they are not only ready for it, they want more.
Yeah. Exactly. So another objection that I've heard come up is that, well, we don't really need to worry about giving our kids worldview training. The church, they've been in the church since the time they were in preschool, and they're getting all they need to live productive lives in the culture. How would you respond to that objection?
We can't assume that. We can't assume that, and I say that from
That,
experience. And if we're talking about Summit, I'll stick there. We experience
yeah,
students at Summit who have been raised their whole lives in a church setting and in a Christian home, who do not realize that the Bible itself is one cohesive story of reality. We experience
right.
students who have never heard a sermon or a teaching that included the word abortion. We experience
Yeah.
students who know a lot about sex from the culture that we live in. I think it was Julie Slattery. She's a great teacher on how the church can offer a better view of sex, has it a podcast that I would say maybe adults only. Check it out first. But Julie Slattery said, one of our problems is that we have been educated by the church. In other words, don't have sex until marriage, but we've been discipled by the
Hmm.
culture. So there's a
That
lacking
man, that's a
view.
powerful one. Yeah.
Yes. And I think on any of those issues, you could say that perhaps the church said something about it or did that. But all of these things, parents, let me just speak to parents, have been brought to our doorstep. And as much as we want to cushion our children and shield them and preserve their childhood for as long as possible, by the time they reach eligible age for Summit, which is 16 to 22 years of age for that student conference, it's already been dropped on your doorstep. So the luxury of having lengthy childhoods where they just are kept shielded from the world is not something that we have the privilege of in our time and our place. But God has put those students here for a purpose. So in presenting the cases that we do at Summit, what we tell them is not only do we understand what's going on in the culture, but Christianity has something relevant to say about it. Not only that, something better to say about it.
Yeah, so true. Another pushback I've gotten, which we have a partial answer to on this show, is that it costs a lot of money to send your kid to Summit. You're going to drop a couple of thousand by the time you fly them out there, pay for room and board and the tuition and all that. Could you address the cost and why we need to think differently about that cost?
I can address it for many reasons, but the first reason is given that every student who comes to Summit is changed in some way, whether they're just given some things to think about that they don't come around to thinking about until later, whether they become convinced of the truth of the Christian worldview, whether they become passionate about running in one particular lane or more than one for Christ and for the sake of his kingdom. Every student is changed in some way. I don't know that you can put a price tag on that, Scott. Like what?
No, I don't think you can. And I think there's a part of me that wants to grab some of these parents and say, wait a minute, you're fully prepared to drop up to 40K a year sending your
Mm,
kid to some prestigious school somewhere where they're going to take that 40K a year and use it to talk your own kid out of their faith.
yeah,
And you're worried about dropping a couple of thousand to inoculate your student against those hurtful ideas.
bingo.
And I think we need to reprioritize discipling our own teens.
Yes. It-
Now we do have a way to approach that cost. We have discount codes. You can see them on our websites if you'll visit that for Summit, and you can enter that code, and you will get a very nice discount from having watched this show. It's a Case for Life discount. You'll see it on our sites, and that will help with the cost. Now, Megan, have you had any stories where grandparents maybe stepped up and said, "Hey, I want my grandson or granddaughter to get this training," and they've stepped up and provided the help to get their grandkids there?
Not only that, this past weekend in Dallas, I met a set of grandparents who sent their grandson last year. He had a life altering experience. And I say that in many meanings of that word. Life altering are those words. They're sending him back this year because he came to them and asked, "May I go again?" So, yes,
Yeah.
grandparents who have stepped up and recognized the need for their grandchildren to be able to go and have this experience, whether they're, asking for it or not, gifting the experience to them. I will say that Summit is, it's a donor based ministry, um, much like Life Training Institute, much like Stand to Reason. But because of that, there are donors in Summit's goodness 63 years, 64 years now. I can't remember the anniversary that's coming up. It's been around for a long time. But there are donors
Yep.
who give to Summit for the sole purpose that they want students to come, which means there's financial aid available. And maybe just an added point, not only grandparents who stepped up to the plate, but sponsors in the church. So a family who sees the importance of this and knows that there are students in the student ministry who provide maybe scholarship opportunities, and even churches that set aside funds to send students, usually based on something they want the students to want to go. But I've heard of many cases of people making it possible for students to get to Summit Ministry. So all that to say, the price tag is not a hurdle, or it shouldn't be.
Right. In fact, my wife and I have personally helped fund students get there. They're not even our kids, but they're kids from our church or kids we encounter somewhere that we want them to go. So we take
Mm.
care of whatever they need to get there. And I consider that an investment in the kingdom and something that can make a real difference. I'm thinking about somebody I think you may know, Dick Pence. Do you know Dick Pence from Montana?
Oh, I
He's
know
a
the name
Summit
probably
guy.
because of you. Hmm.
Well, Dick Pence, he's a grandfather, and he, of course, has sent all of his grandkids, their nieces, their cousins, whatever, to Summit. And he and his wife have personally funded that. That's how much he believes in this. And that man looks at his income every year and says, okay, here's how much I'm going to need to get the number of kids to Summit I need to get. And he just budgets that and makes it a priority because he's that convinced it makes a difference. One
Yeah.
other thing that parents might be concerned about, and you alluded to this earlier, but I think it'd be helpful for you to say it again. They might think, Summit sounds great for a kid who's an extrovert, who easily makes friends, but my teen is quiet, doesn't make friends very easily, tends to be more reserved. Are they going to fall through the cracks at Summit?
And the answer to that is no, they're not going to fall through the cracks. The number one reason they're not going to fall through the cracks is because there is a staff member at Summit, someone who's just a little farther along in life than they are, who has been assigned to be a mentor and leader and a friend to them. Now, these staff members are not just hired arbitrarily. They come to Summit, many of them because they've experienced Summit in the past themselves, and they wanted to come back and make a
Yep.
difference for someone else because a difference was made for them. So those staffers know where every one of their students are at any given time. They are trained to engage them. And generally, the people who come to Summit, once they find there are like-minded young people there, which is not something a lot of students have in their home environments, they become kind of extroverted pretty quickly. Still, there's plenty of downtime for those introverts. I'm one of them, so I understand.
Yeah. By the way, I got to give a plug to you and Trip for your parenting. Your daughter Neely has been a staffer at Summit, and she has just done a phenomenal job. I've seen her twice now, once at the Georgia conference and once in Colorado last summer. Great job, and she's just thriving, it seems, and I'm really excited. I hope I'll see her again this summer.
Yeah, well, Neely is looking for opportunities to go on pro-life missions trips where she can talk to college students about the pro-life view. So
I love it.
that's because she, you know, she calls you Uncle Scott. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm her car guru. There's a story there. We won't get into it now. But hey, we're going to take a break, folks. When we come back, I'm going to ask Megan this question. What are you teaching on this summer? And give us a little overview of the topics you're going to be covering. So we'll look at that in the next segment after this break. We'll see you then. Hello, friends. You may not have time to read a full-length treatment of abortion like I've done in this book, The Case for Life, the second edition, but you may have time to take what amounts to 7 sessions, a week's worth of study if you want to do it day by day, to learn how to defend your pro-life views persuasively. We have a basic course that will help you do just that. You will learn how to make a formal case for the pro-life position. You will learn how to defend it with science and philosophy. Even with non-Christians, you can make a case for the pro-life view. Then we'll teach you how to handle objections, how to recognize the 5 bad ways people argue about abortion, and how they often bring up things that are beside the point. You'll learn to keep the main thing, so that you're in charge instead of feeling like you're in the hot seat whenever the issue of abortion comes up. Visit the website for details. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here today with Megan Almon of Stand to Reason. And again, this is someone you need to get in touch with if you want to have a speaker that knows how to connect with students and adults communicating the truth of the Christian worldview. Megan, you're going to be teaching at Summit again this summer, as will I. What topics are you going to be covering?
Well, as you know, Scott, I only talk about the pro-life topics when you're not there. So there's just a few times that I'll be doing that. But we teach pro-life apologetics.
No, the real story, you're being too modest. The real story is I used to do all of them, and you've now sucked some of those pro-life topics away from me because you're that good. But go on.
Well, I learned from the best. But
and I'm not jealous, by the way. No envy here. I'm just being honest.
They split it as evenly as they can between the two of us. Pro-life apologetics, moral relativism, the bankruptcy of moral relativism, and an overview of bioethics, which is more and more a pressing topic in our time and place. Yeah. You and I cover issues like in vitro fertilization, end-of-life issues, and biotech and enhancement type questions, which more and more students are asking. I'll also be talking about marriage, not how to have a great marriage, but really just a biblical case for marriage and even a natural law approach to marriage. Is it something real, or can we redefine marriage to be something else? So that topic typically takes a lot of students by surprise and has grown in popularity. And then I'll be talking about beauty and aesthetics, which one of my favorite topics, is beauty real? And if it's real, does it matter? And the case I'll make is not only is it real and objective, a word that your listeners are familiar with by now, but that it does matter. And the Christian worldview, because it has a home for the reality of beauty, beauty actually gives significant meaning to our day in and day out interactions.
So you're saying beauty is objective. You mean to tell me that there's an objective difference between Handel's Messiah and Bad Bunny?
Yes. I mean to tell you that.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, and I think our students might be shocked to hear that because they've always been told, well, beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Well,
But no, I agree.
I can speak to that quickly without going all into it. Beauty, in order for there to be real beauty present, there has to be both order and surprise. Order and surprise come together, and those are the moments that we find beautiful. What we find in Handel's Messiah is a beautiful order. That music, is mathematically just perfection. I'm sure that computer programmers use it to write code like they would with Johann Sebastian Bach's music.
Yeah.
But not only that,
Yeah.
there's the element of surprise, because when you listen, if you do the hard work of listening, because Messiah demands a lot from us, you'll
Yep.
be brought to tears. So both beauty and surprise are evident.
Yes.
When we look at Bad Bunny's music, there may be small elements of the way we would define beauty. After all, God made the world, so there is beauty in everything. That's a philosophical statement. But mostly what we
Right.
find with Bad Bunny is surprise that is run amok and very little order to that. We don't find goodness. We don't find truth. And so beauty has to be missing as well. It's surprise that's been elevated above all else. So what we really have is disorder, and that can't be beautiful.
No. Well, folks, you've heard us give a pitch here today for Summit Ministries. Parents, I cannot stress enough how important your student needs to be exposed, how important it is for your student to be exposed to solid biblical worldview teaching. As Megan very eloquently put it, we must never assume they understand a biblical worldview, much less be able to defend it. We have to be very intentional about that. And that's going to mean we invest our time and resources to make sure our students get the training they need. Parents, this is not a slam on you. We're not saying you're somehow deficient.
No.
But Megan's point a moment ago was very profound. This culture we find ourselves in today is so overwhelmingly wicked and so overwhelmingly aggressive in the way it comes after your students. Your kids are not just in a world of live and let be. They're in a world where the culture is demanding they comply with certain modes of thinking, or else. That's the whole woke worldview. Agree with us or you're an oppressor. Agree with us or you need to be canceled and stopped. So your students need to be equipped to have the confidence that their Christian worldview is true, and have the confidence they need to convey that worldview to people who are unchurched. And this is something we cannot leave to happen by accident. We need to be intentional about it. And I think Summit Ministries does the best job of anybody I've seen in making sure our kids understand a biblical worldview on a whole host of issues: abortion, marriage, biotechnology, ethics, and the list goes on, and know how to communicate that biblical worldview to those that may not understand. So that's the goal here, is to help our students be good citizens here so that we have more good citizens in heaven. I'll put it that way. Megan, I really appreciate you being with us the last 2 episodes. Thank you. And you have a blessed day, and I'll look forward to seeing the rest of you on a subsequent show. But again, be sure to look at Summit's information on our website. We've got links there for discounts for your students, and I hope grandparents and parents, you will consider this seriously. Thanks for joining us today.